Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the lyrics from Exhumed, Red Asphalt, out February 20th on Relapse Records. The album has 10 tracks, 37 minutes in length, and this is the band's 10th full-length studio album. They are an American death metal band. Now before I talk about the design of the record, I have to mention that this is a theme-driven album. I wouldn't go as far as to say that this is a concept record, but definitely a theme-driven album, a theme that's going to be represented in the lyrics, in the song titles, in the album artwork, and to a certain degree into the sound itself. Now as far as the design is concerned, I like how they built this record. First and foremost, 10 songs, 37 minutes. For a very heavy and brutal death metal album, that's exactly where I want to be. I want the album to feel strong, to feel aggressive, to feel robust, to feel brutal at the end of the day. But I want the experience not to overburden me as a listener, because I want to be able to see the uniquenesses that each and every single song has, and not allow the album to mask them and just create a very uniform experience all the way throughout. And that's exactly how this album presents itself. First, with a choice of 10 songs, 37 minutes, that has a clear impact on the overall experience, but also in not putting too many songs with similar attributes back to back to back. This allows the record to feel a little bit more different every so often, or at least offer a slight reset, which makes the uniquenesses of the songs rise to the surface a lot quicker and a lot easier, making the overall experience of the album a lot more interesting, increasing the playability of the record at the exact same time. Once you get to the sound of the album, overall this is a very traditional American style death metal sounding record. You're going to have different influences on this album, and I think that's where the uniquenesses of the songs come in. All of them are influences that come from the core of what American death metal sound is all about, but all of them have their own attributes, if you will. Allowing this record to have those influences and those attributes definitely makes the album sonically more pleasing. It takes nothing away from the heaviness or the brutality of the album, but it makes the record overall more palpable. It also increases the mobility that the songs have internally and how they switch from one to the next, allowing you to feel like the tracks have different directions, different ideas, matching the topics of the songs, the themes of the songs, creating a sound that better represents that sort of track, making a more connected record all around. It's not just about creating a sound experience for the song, but it's creating a sound experience that brings to life the lyrics and the themes of the individual tracks. I think that's exactly where this album resides from an overall sound experience point of view. I also like the fact that the record has a little bit of an older style production to it. It's not modern, it's not super crisp, it's not super clean. When you listen to this album, you're going to hear a lot of grit coming from the guitars and grit coming from the bass. As far as the guitars are concerned, I like the overall execution on the guitar sound. I like that grit. I like the guitars to feel really heavy and not cleaned or narrow or overproduced. I want the guitars to have more of a raw feel to them, to bring a little bit of the live experience into the studio. When it comes to death metal, it works extremely well, and it works really well on this record because it adds that extra roughness to the sound, making the sound feel even more brutal, even heavier. That guitar sound is important, that rustic feel around the guitar sound is important, and on this album, having the bass pop in a lot really helps that same guitar sound, because the bass also has a lot of grit. So when you have a lot of grit on the bass, when you have a lot of grit on the guitars, those elements overall bring that old school production into the forefront, allowing the album to have that more organic nature to it. Like I said, bringing the live experience into the studio, creating a much rougher sounding album, which increases the level of intensity of the record and increases the level of aggression of the record, and it makes this more of a down-to-earth, no frills death metal sounding album all around. The only issue that I really had with the sound on this record is that I felt that the drums could have been a little bit fuller consistently. It's not to say that the drums are not fuller on a track here and a track there, because they are. There's a lot of moments where the drums on this record feel powerful, sound powerful, and really help shape the size and the overall aggression and brutality of the tracks. but there's also songs where I felt like the drums lacked a little bit of intensity, they lacked a little bit of size, they lacked a little bit of oomph, and definitely a little bit of texture. So having a more consistent approach as far as the overall drum sound on this album is concerned would still allow the record to have all the grit in the world, would still allow the record to have that live experience to it, but would also add a little bit more to the inside of the sound and not just to where the sound needs to end as far as the borders are concerned. I think it would create a much robust experience all around, more consistent from that standpoint. And if you could go even further, it would make the record sound bigger. The record really sounds like at times like a very grimy death metal sounding album. And there are times where it doesn't have necessarily that experience. So I think pushing the album to a more robust, a more fuller style sound, with the drums really filling in the space, still allowing the grit of the guitars and bass to coexist, but on the outside perimeter of it, I think overall would give a certain level of consistency to this record that right now I don't really see it there. As far as the vocals are concerned, I like the dynamics between the vocals, the styles, the approach, the delivery. I feel like the vocals on this record absolutely nailed it when it comes to the sound experience, when it comes to the topics, when it comes to the themes of the songs, the lyrics. I have nothing to say negatively about the vocals on this album. I think this album actually is a great death metal record from a vocal standpoint, adding also a lot of movement, the same movement that we see from track to track. You're going to find that same sort of movement existing within the songs with the overall vocal delivery. Also helping emphasize the lyrical content, the themes, the stories of the songs. The vocals do a great job painting a much better picture, or at least a very vivid picture, of what the lyrics and themes of these songs are all about. This is definitely a no frills death metal sounding album. Like I said, I would have liked to see more consistency out of the drums, but that's not enough for me to say that this record is not worth listening to. This is a great record to listen to. If you're a fan of death metal, if you're a fan of American death metal, that very specific American death metal style, this record checks all the boxes. It's a great album with great songs, great themes, great overall concept or theme, but great individual themes on a track-by-track basis. Super brutal, super heavy, super gritty. Old school, but not overly old school. Definitely not modern, but also very live. If you could feel that experience being brought back into the studio, really adding a certain level of aggression to this record that otherwise would have been possible. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Red Asphalt. This song has some unique characteristics to it that I thought was really interesting. First of all, it has a very dark opening riff, a riff that really lingers through the song, or a melody I should say that really lingers through the song. The bass really pops on this track, and that adds grit to the overall feel and vibe of the song itself. It's a heavy song, but it's also a dark sounding song, or it has a vibe of darkness surrounding it. It has heavy drums, and the drums on this song really have not just size, but they have fullness to them. And I think that's an important aspect for this track, because it really helps emphasize the brutality and the heaviness of the song a little bit better. It's still a track that has a lot of energy. The guitars have a lot of life in them, and the guitars really work at creating ebbs and flows in this song. Sometimes a little bit more compact with the rest of the sound, adding more grit, more size, and sometimes breaking away from that, a little bit more of a melody here, a riff there, a grooviness over there. So the guitars have a lot of life within the overall context of the song, which makes the song have more movement within itself. Still a very dark song all around, but the overall guitar execution on this track is excellent. And when you look at the song, when you look at the guitar sound and that overall darkness, man, this song kind of reminded me of a track that Death would do. So you could definitely see that that influence on this song in terms of the attributes of the guitar sound, but even from a composition standpoint. Then you have Shock Trauma. This is a really Slayer-esque style song. It's a Slayer-esque style song, especially if you go back to the early days of Hell Awaits of Slayer. This track has a very similar vibe in terms of how raw it is, how unpolished it is, how unfiltered it is. The guitar solo section is excellent, also reminding me of that era of Slayer. Very brutal, very heavy, very intense, in your face, both musically and vocally. It's a track that just doesn't hold back. It just feels incredibly intense. And for a song that has that sort of intensity, that has that sort of vibe, it has a very hooky chorus. Easy to remember, super short, shock trauma. It's just one of those tracks that creates an earworm where you don't expect one to exist, considering how heavy the overall song is, feels, and the way it comes across. Last but definitely not least, Signal 30. This is in ways similar to Shock Trauma in terms of the brutality and in terms of the heaviness. But this one is a little bit more straightforward. It's a little bit more direct. It's Shock Trauma turned all the way to 11, if you will. So it feels more demolishing, it feels more brutal, it feels heavier. It just has an overall heavier experience. The vocals also bring a lot more heaviness to the forefront. They bring a lot more aggression, a lot more intensity, and there are some pockets within this song that give you some room to breathe. Specifically, the solo sections really allow the song to breathe a little bit better. It gives the listener a sense of a reprieve, because overall the brutality of this song is such, the intensity of this song is such, that really feels at times like it's suffocating the listener. So you honestly need a few pockets here and there just for you to catch your breath from how intense the overall track is and the way it feels to the listener going through it. This is it, Exhumed with Red Asphalt, once again out February 20th on Relapse Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next one. Take care, guys.